Hello everyone, my name is Rowan McLeod, and today I'm going to be talking to you about civic participation that goes beyond the voting booth. So it's finally here, the end of the 2020 presidential election cycle. Many people might be feeling excited that their candidate won, but there might also be a feeling of, what do I do next? Others might be feeling disillusioned with this voting system and wonder how can they influence politics when the candidate of their choice did not come into power during this election cycle. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about several different ways that you can remain politically active, whether your party of choice is in power or not. First of all, it's important to know and to remember that you still do have a voice. One way that you can exercise and make your voice heard is by contacting your politicians at the state, local, and federal level. Whether or not you're a Democrat or a Republican, and whether or not your elected officials share your views, you can still talk to them via phone call, via a letter, or an email, and ensure that they are listening to your needs. We tend to think of lobbying as something that only powerful interest groups do. However, citizens also have access to their elected officials. Citizens do have the power to influence policy. Lawmakers' most important mission is to get reelected. And while that might sound pessimistic, it's actually how democracy works. One way that lawmakers can get reelected is by listening to the needs of their constituents, whether their constituents share their beliefs or not. So pick up a pen, pick up your computer, or maybe even pick up your phone or drive directly to your representative's office. Some tips to keep in mind if you're planning on getting into contact with your representatives at any level of government is to, one, make it personal. Legislators are humans and they want to know how these issues are affecting you personally. This can also be more persuasive when you're contacting your legislators, so they know exactly how these policies and these issues affect you. Number two, bring friends. We always have strength in numbers, and to show that your concerns are not an isolated issue, you can bring friends who are also similarly affected by this issue that you are trying to bring to your legislators' attention. Unfortunately, getting in contact with legislators or representatives does not always produce the results that one might want. So, it's important to recognize that there's power in numbers. Beyond simply contacting your representatives, it's important to get organized and join groups, or create your own group. Finding a group of individuals that are like-minded or share your values can be very empowering. It also has a lot of real-world power that can create tangible results in a way that writing your legislators might not be able to do. So it's important to get organized. It's not enough to just find a group of people that think like you. You also have to have set goals that you plan to achieve during your time together. These goals can be related to anything, from getting a bill passed to protect animals in your city, or it can even be related to things like healthcare and insurance reform. There are a plethora of ideas that you can get organized around. All that matters is that it's important to you, and that you can find a group of people who can support you and help you achieve your goals. A great way to attract new people to a group is to focus your message. Slogans such as "Yes, we can," or "Make America Great Again" are immediately recognized with certain politicians. The same can be said with different groups. Black Lives Matter, is another example of an organized group that has created a slogan that is immediately recognizable and has helped spread their message across the entire United States. After you've formed your group, you've focused your message, and you've created tangible policy goals, it's important to take this organization effort outside of your group. This can look like organizing protests, peaceful protests, or it can look like attending town hall meetings where you contact politicians or even bureaucrats who have the power to influence policy on your particular issue concerns. Political participation does not have to be explicitly political in nature. Although casting ballots, contacting our representatives, and organizing groups around particular policy interests is important, that does not have to be the extent of your political participation. Sometimes the simple act of volunteering and helping out others in our community can be an extremely political act that can have lasting impacts outside of the political sphere. So whether you want to volunteer at a homeless shelter, volunteer at a library, or volunteer in many other places, the simple act of volunteering is political in nature, and it can create ripple effects for our entire communities. I hope that during my talk today, you learned a little bit about different ways that you can influence public policy as well as impact your community. While going to the voting booth is extremely important, it's not the only way that you can make your voice heard. Especially, it's important not to limit your political participation to presidential election years. Our lives are impacted by policies that are enacted at different levels of government, like the local and state level. It's important to remain informed and up to date on all elections, but it's also important to be familiar with your representatives so you can keep in contact with them. It's also important to be active in your community through organizing efforts so you can create change that politicians that represent you might not be aware that there might need to be a change made. It's also important to simply volunteer and reach out with your community. Again, I hope you learned something, that this public service announcement will take you beyond traditional political participation.